If we were in government today, would we have the will and the energy to create the NHS, let alone fight for climate change? I hope we would, and that is why I'm urging you to vote for the CWU's motion today on climate change.
Comrades, Matt Rack, Fire Brigade Union, climate change is a catastrophe and it requires a broad policy response. If you look at this summer conference, we see the climate catastrophe unfolding in front of our eyes every single day. We say this is a climate catastrophe is a workers' issue, it's a trade union issue, it's a class issue.
We need an international socialist Green New Deal, a worker-led just transition, and climate justice for all. Do not believe corporations when they say little individual lifestyle changes are good enough. Even with global lockdowns, emissions in 2020 were only 7% less than 2019.
I am supporting public ownership of energy. I am supporting climate rights, and I am supporting my fellow young people. I am sick and tired of these fake solutions. I am sick and tired of missing school for climate strikes.
The wishy-washy words about striving to eliminate the climate crisis we're already in is insufficient to win exactly the young people and those who are most affected by climate change to our banner.
But conference, please listen when I say this. We will not mitigate the impact of climate change unless we unite. We need to stop arguing with each other and work to protect generations, to protect our planet, and to prove to the world that we care about the future of our generations.
When I stand with the working class suggestions of the Labour Party, I know I belong here, but I look at some of the Tory saboteurs in the PLP who actively worked against a socialist Labour victory in 2017 and 2019, the ones who'd rather see a Tory government than a socialist ones, who stabbed Corbyn and the working people of Britain in the back. If it wasn't for them, we could be 4 years into a socialist Green New Deal. We don't have much time. I urge conference to commit to a socialist Green New Deal, support public ownership, and let's fight for a socialist Labour Party. Thank you very much.
Point of clarity, clearly in the composite meeting that took place yesterday, it is classed as a socialist, and the title of this is a socialist Green New Deal, and not just a Green New Deal.
Thank you, Delegate.
We must have our say at this conference. We must have our say.
I love this broad church party where we're all entitled to our own political views and to have a debate, but I don't think we can be entitled to our own facts. There was no vote on the NEC statement yesterday. In fact, Harry told us that couldn't be referenced back. He didn't say we could vote against. Now, it's actually a very important substantive thing that a lot of this delegation, this conference wants to vote against because it includes Ken Loach having to be auto-excluded.
If people want to defend the rip-off private ownership of energy in this company, don't do it in the newsrooms, come here and debate it at conference.
I'm Aden Harris, I'm from Filton in Bradley Stoke, just outside of Bristol, and I did not plan to speak, but I am going to anyway, so I apologise to all of you. There are two climate motions on the floor today. One supports public ownership of energy, debt relief for poorer countries, and rights for climate refugees, which is so important. And the other supports green gas and nuclear. There is no such thing as green gas. It's 2021 and no progressive party, no socialist party should be supporting fossil fuels at all. We need a radical, internationalist, socialist Green New Deal, not a watered-down motion in favour of delay. That will do nothing for workers at all. So I'm asking you, vote in favour of motion 1 and oppose motion 2. And we will pay for it by taxing the rich. And yes, Rachel Reeves, there is a money tree. It's called the top 1%. So let's tax them. It's a forest. It is a forest. We will tax them and we will save this planet. And it can be done and we will do it. Solidarity, comrades. Solidarity. Join us, climate strikers, on the 5th of November to stand up for the climate and fight for socialism and a Green New Deal.
Chair, Conference, Patricia Ferguson, Glasgow, Annie San, CLP. As we know, in just over a month, the world's leaders will converge in Glasgow to discuss climate. It is hoped that they will commit to a programme which builds on COP21, but hopefully is much more ambitious than that. And it needs to be more ambitious if we are to have any chance of slowing down climate change and ultimately reversing it. Glasgow was built and prospered in many ways on the back of previous industrial revolutions, but far too many of our citizens were left behind, and far too many of our citizens are still left behind. So our Green New Deal, our Green Revolution, must make sure that no one is left behind. No communities, no sectors in our industry, and none of our people. Because climate change is as much a social injustice as an environmental one. And Labour has to promote a just green recovery, addressing employment, climate change and public health. We must support a Green New Deal, making our homes part of the solution and not part of the problem. And we must make sure that we expand public transport and use newer, greener technologies to do so. And of course, we have to work with our trade unions to ensure that workers have the skills they need to work in this new environment.
Thank you, Delegate. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair.
Sam Carling, Bishop Auckland CLP, speaking in support of the public ownership motion. Conference, when massive swathes of our public services were privatised by the Tories decades ago, they promised it would raise efficiency, using arguments centred on competition and market forces to explain it. But what they glossed over is that private companies only ever look out for themselves. They don't care about the people using their services. They care about making as much profit as they can. I welcome this motion. I only wish it went further. Take water, for example. What do you do if you don't like your water company? Buy bottled water? There's nothing you can do. You have to accept the prices they give you and pay up knowing full well your money is being funneled into the pockets of the already rich. The Tories told us privatising water would solve water leaks because companies would be so profit-driven they'd fix it all. They haven't. More than 1 in 5 litres of water leaks out of the systems. Is that efficiency? Is that good value for money? No. But look at Scotland, where water is publicly owned. Scottish Water has cut leaks from 1,100 million litres to 463 million litres per year. When the public have democratic say over how public services are run, they are run so much better. We can end the disgusting price fixing seen in so many areas like energy and broadband prices. Services which seem to give us a choice, but really don't. And it's the same story with... Oh. No, I was going to say, and this ties into the climate emergency. When profit is not the sole motivation under a nationalised public service, that service can make better, more sustainable decisions for the future of this planet. Make everyone a shareholder in our public services and support this motion, please.
Thank you, Delegate.
Good afternoon, Conference. Amanda Bentham, Hackney North and Stoke Newington CLP. I'm speaking for public ownership, Composite Motion 5, and I am here to speak up for education. Yes, we absolutely must continue to build quality services that are democratic and give workers and communities a greater voice. We absolutely must build a national free broadband infrastructure as outlined in our 2019 manifesto. It is essential for COVID recovery more now than ever and for our children's futures, and how fantastic to have young people come up and speak today so brilliantly. I applaud them. Conference, the Tories are trying to force all schools to become academies. That is the privatisation of one of our public services. Academisation means the erosion of democracy, autonomy and driving the exam factories regime. It makes schools a hostile environment for children with SEND, for black children who have the wrong haircut, for girls who have the wrong length of skirt, and any other child who does not fit the mould. As a teacher of SEND, I have seen my central service run by the local authority in Tower Hamlets cut savagely. My union, the NEU, estimates that SEND alone is being underfunded at £2.1 billion a year. In Hackney, the shortfall is £13 million. This is a systematic attack on school funding. There is spending per pupil in England is now lower than it was in 2010. What kind of society are the Tories wanting to create? And what kind of society do we want to create? It is absolutely right that Labour defends the NHS against privatisation and calls for public ownership of utilities and rail and mail. But we must also recognise what is happening in education is exactly the same. It is privatisation, it is atomisation, it is outsourcing.
Thank you, Delegate. Thank you.
I will just sum up, if I may, by saying, Conference, we need to talk about school structure. It is bringing publicly funded educational services back into a coordinated, fully funded system with proper democratic oversight. We need an NHS, we need a national care service, we need a national education service. Please support the motion and please come along to the Socialist Educational Association fringe meeting today at 4 o'clock. Thank you, Chair.
Hi, Conference. Diarmaid Kelleher from Glasgow Kelvin CLP, and I want to speak in support of Composite 1, but I first want to also say that I support the community wealth building motion and particularly mention the amazing work that's been done in North Ayrshire by Labour Council there. I want to talk specifically about the National Care Service element that's just been mentioned that's in Composite 1. As we all know, in 1948, when the Labour government established the NHS, Nye Bevan, the architect of that, said no society can legitimately call itself civilised if a sick person is denied medical aid because of lack of means. This is seen as common sense for medical care, but social care is still left to the vagaries of the private sector and provision is woefully inadequate. The pandemic has highlighted the chronic structural weakness in our existing care systems, which saw so many suffer due to these wasted decades of neglect. So there was kind of discussion before conference and in compositing about why a national care service should be in a Green New Deal motion. And I think this is really important. The Green New Deal needs to be socialist and it needs to be feminist. And it needs to support the work that's done in predominantly feminised workplaces. So to be clear, green jobs are for the care worker just as much as for the car worker. A green job is a zero-carbon job, and jobs in social care are green jobs, and a national care service is a key component of a green jobs revolution. For too long, social care has been an industry infected by exploitation and precarity for both workers and those who are cared for. With climate change and worsening extreme weather events alongside an ageing population, we can easily predict that our existing care system is facing imminent collapse. As our current system falls apart, the floor will collapse between the poorest feet first, as the wealthy find safety in premium private services. So the expansion of social care on similar terms of the NHS is an expansion of a socially just green industry and gets to the core of what a Green New Deal is all about, achieving climate and economic justice. Thank you.
Hello, Conference. Jonathan Davis, Unite, proud Welshman working in the southwest of England. Thank you. I'm not going to sing or anything, it's all right. No, I'm speaking in support of Composite 2, and specifically the nuclear part. I work down in the nuclear new build in Hinkley Point C. I understand, a lot of people will be against nuclear. I'm here just to give you a quick point on how well established the unions are down at Hinkley Point C and are going to be on the new nuclear bills at Sizewell, etc. We have massive membership down there. We have over 50 reps, of which 12 are full-time, which is unprecedented in our construction industry. At peak, which will be next year, there'll be over 10,000 people working on the project in some capacity. And over the duration of the project, there's going to be 120,000 people who will pass through on the churn. And that's not to mention the supply chain that also represents as well. So I urge you to support the composite. I understand it's slightly contentious to some people, but I can assure you for our movement and for our industry and construction, it's massively important. So please do support it. In the words of a famous Welsh band, if we tolerate this, our children will be next. Please support.
Thank you, Delegate.
Hi, Janet Matthews from North West Durham. I was in Composite Meeting 1 and I'm supporting it. However, I don't think it goes far enough. We couldn't take it far enough. And there's 70% of UK land is agricultural, and farmers' work was condensed to 2 lines. It's not good enough. These farmers have been in environmental schemes for 30-odd years. They've been working those, and they just seem to be pushed to one side. I know Arla, the dairy firm, have got some of their dairy farms doing a big study. They're studying everything they can to sort out the science. NFU have got a campaign about buying British, eating seasonally. I think we need to look at the farming thing because 2 lines doesn't cover that. I'm from North West Durham. Red Wall, agricultural. You are not going to win the agricultural communities without doing something for them. And you're not going to get those Red Wall constituencies back. Thank you.
Delegate. Okay, I think we've had all our speakers. So a massive thank you to all the contributions from all the delegates that spoke. That's absolutely... Our final video message comes from our good friends in Germany.
Dear Keir, dear members and delegates of the UK Labour Party, dear friends. From Germany, we send you our best greetings for your annual conference. To stop climate change and to preserve our environment is the greatest challenge we face. The 26th UN Climate Change Conference, held in Glasgow later this year, offers the great opportunity to deepen our cooperation and to send a strong signal for a global partnership approach to accelerate the transformation. It is clear that we must fight climate change more ambitiously than we have done so far in order to leave our children and grandchildren a planet to live on. For this to happen, the way we live, consume and produce must be fundamentally changed in Europe and all over the world. After 250 years of fossil fuels, we must now accelerate cutting greenhouse gas emissions in order to shorten our path to carbon neutrality. In other words, we have to initiate a green and digital industrialization, and we have to do it now. This transformation ahead of us contains enormous opportunities if we do it right, if we do it socially just. That is the key. We, SPD and Labour, as well as our friends from the progressive family around Europe, are the ones able to shape this path in a socially just way and in line with the realities of individual lives. We are the ones able to use the potential of transformation for good and sustainable jobs and to maintain our prosperity in the future. While many countries are stepping up their national efforts, international ambitions are yet to be implemented. There is still no framework at the international level to protect climate policy pioneers from disadvantages in economic competition. Therefore, we need to deepen our international cooperation on climate policy. We need to create international lead markets for climate-friendly technologies. And we need to strengthen confidence in international climate policy coordination. With the return of the United States to the Paris Agreement and President Biden's ambitious agenda, there is a new window of opportunity. We should use it because the global problem of climate change also needs global answers. What I suggest is a climate club consisting of committed states mapping common goals and thus working together to ensure that this great new industrial revolution will be successful without leaving anyone behind. Being progressives, let's make this step forward to strengthen global efforts to tackle the consequences of the climate crisis and limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. Let us take the lead. Let us start the future now. For your annual conference, I wish you success, fruitful debates, and all the best for all the tasks ahead.
Conference. At the beginning, I did say that we'd have a Policy Commission responder for this debate. Unfortunately, we don't, so we'll move straight to our final closing speaker. And I'd like to introduce Jo Stevens.
Thank you very much, Chair. Hello, Conference. Jo Stevens, Cardiff Central CLP, and I think after 25 Labour conferences, a first-time speaker. The Tories don't take digital culture, media and sport seriously, but we do. Because when we reflect on the past 18 months, whilst our wonderful frontline workers looked after us, kept the country going, the brilliant, talented people who work in digital culture, media and sport also helped us survive that time. Sportsmen and women competed in empty stadiums. Musicians rehearsed in their bedrooms and streamed performances online. Technology kept us in touch with friends just around the corner and across the globe. And writers and broadcasters tried to decipher and explain to us what on earth Boris Johnson and his ministers were saying in those press conferences. You may have heard that at the start of this year I was hospitalised because of COVID, and so I'm not going to miss this opportunity today to say a heartfelt and personal thank you to everyone working in our NHS. You got me through a very frightening experience, and to everyone who sent me good wishes, thank you too, because it meant such a lot, and I know that I was one of the lucky ones. And I know I'm not alone in wanting to prioritise health, well-being and happiness for people across the country. As Keir set out in his leadership platform, The happiness of the British people is just as important as economic growth. Labour's Healthy Living Index will ensure that every government decision will have to improve well-being, just as the Office for Budget Responsibility tracks government spending. A healthy and a happy life is a right that Labour will fight for. Everyone should have the opportunity of both good quality work and good quality leisure. And central to that is our tech sector. The UK is a digital powerhouse, with entrepreneurs and innovators attracting investment and creating good jobs. But too many people are not seeing the benefits of these developments, because the Tories have let the country down on the rollout of superfast broadband, and they're putting the public at risk by failing to deliver on their so-called world-leading legislation that they promised on online harms. 4 years on, all we have is a weak and watered-down online safety bill that does not even satisfy the basic duty of government to keep its citizens safe. They've left big social media companies unchecked and unregulated, while those platforms host growing levels of child abuse, self-harm and suicide content, anti-vax misinformation, discrimination, hate speech and more. And Conference, let me tell you, those companies, those social media companies, are making a lot of money out of it. The Tories want to leave them to self-regulate, to mark their own homework. But self-regulation doesn't work. We know that already. And the epidemic of online fraud and scams continues. Last year, more than £2.3 billion was lost by victims in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. But the government refuses to include protection for the people in the bill. Financial campaigner Martin Lewis has called for it. Victims have, the City of London Police and the Financial Conduct Authority. But the Conservatives say no. Well, Labour will do what the Tory government won't. We will fight inside and outside Parliament for better legislation that protects the public against the fraudsters and the scammers. That forces a proper duty of care on social media companies about what they host on their platforms. And unlike the government, we'll fight for criminal penalties for senior tech execs who repeatedly breach the new law. And Conference, many good, responsible tech businesses agree with us. They agree with us that we need clear and effective regulation. So we will continue to work with them to make our lives safer online, especially for our children. Conference, we have a very proud record in government. It was a Labour government that made galleries and museums free to visit, and a Labour government that created our wonderful cities of culture. Contrast that with the Tories. 11 years of austerity, and then, during the pandemic, excluding hundreds of thousands of creative industry workers from any financial help at all. Dismissing their jobs as not viable. Well, our ballet dancers don't need to retrain in cyber because Britain excels at both, and our brilliant British creative industries were the fastest growing sector in our economy before the pandemic, and Labour believes that they can be again. But Conference, the Tories have erected barriers for British business and British talent, and they can't even be bothered to get a new agreement with the EU so that our musicians and performers and crews can tour across Europe. Tory red tape is holding our country's talent back. So if they won't go to Europe to fix the problem, Labour will. Conference, as I said at the beginning, the Tories don't take digital culture, media and sport seriously. In fact, they're on their 11th Secretary of State in as many years. They just see it as a stepping stone to higher office. But what sort of message does that send to the sector? What sort of message does it send to the people who work in it? DCMS is my dream job. I want to do it in a Labour government with our fabulous team of shadow Labour ministers and not in a Labour opposition. Because conference, we know that it's only by winning power that we get that precious opportunity to change people's lives for the better. So if we want to see a happier and healthier future for our country, we know what we have to do. So let's roll up our sleeves and get on with it together. Thank you, conference.
Thank you, Joe. We've come to the end of this session, but I want to say a massive thank you to conference. Thank you for your passion, for your valuable contributions, your discipline and your respect, and hope you enjoy a fantastic conference. And this concludes the Environment, Energy and Culture debate. Thank you.
Oh, goodness.
Yes, there is. I just needed to do the formal sort of end. I'm coming to the voting sections now. Sorry about that. Goodness me. It's been a long morning. Okay, we will now move to votes. Initially, this will be by show of hands. If this is unclear, we will move to the card vote. We start with the references back on the Environment, Energy and Culture report. Brighton, Kempton, CLP, those for. Brighton, Kempton, CLP, the reference back. And those against? Thank you. So the reference back falls. It was pretty clear sitting here and looking across the hall. I'm going to move on. Oh my goodness. That was just a reference back, so I'm going to move on to the next point. Clwyd South CLP, those for. These are reference backs, remember. Okay, and those against.